All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to thank all of our stakeholders. I can see people from all different roles serving our kids every single day in our school systems in Georgia. So please let the first thing that you hear from Gail and GSSA is thank you for what you do for a living. Thank you for your interest in serving. We've got a special treat for today. We have an excellent relationship with the Georgia Department of Education, and I can tell you, we talk to them quite frequently, and they always go out of their way to make sure that they partner with us, with our two organizations, but also just trying to get the information out in both ways. We give them information, they give us information, and we help each other. And Dr. Lynette Dodson was the director of school nutrition for the state of Georgia, who is a former colleague of mine, rock star school nutrition director from Carrollton City back in the day. Graciously agreed in her busy schedule to join us on short notice and say, hey, look, we want to have a Zoom call and we want you to join us. And could you please facilitate some conversations? And she jumped on that opportunity. So Dr. Dodson, I do want to thank you, and I'll get you rolling in a second. I do want to formally introduce, we got two organizations serving you today, the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders and the Georgia School Superintendents Association are here. And you see Dr. Jody Barrow, who works with policy with GSSA. You also have Keith Porter from GSSA, who helps with professional learning. And I do see probably what we call, does everything that John Zahner asks, Josh Hooper. Josh Hooper is on the line with us from GSSA, and we do want to thank Dr. Zahner and GSSA for his staff and all of their support. And I also see that we have several superintendents. We have staff from the GaDOE. We have recent executive directors online, and I'm sure some wonderful hard-working staff from each of the school systems. So we'll get started. Our purpose today is very simple. We have two or three rising issues from the troops, that's you guys, that you are experiencing regarding school nutrition in terms of food and milk bids and those kinds of things, or lack thereof, as you work to get vendors to support your children with food and meet your nutritional requirements. We also have some big changes coming. We've had the luxury of having no charge lunch and breakfast throughout the pandemic, and we see a sunset time period coming for that policy, which is going to affect your marketing with your parents, with logistics, and making sure that parents that haven't been accustomed to filling out forms for free and reduced lunch eligibility and your participation rates, which directly affects your funding, is going to be a big deal late this summer and early fall. So we thought we would bring Dr. Dodson on to let us know kind of what she's hearing at her level, both from the feds and also from school systems throughout Georgia. So Dr. Dodson, Lynette, I want to say good afternoon and thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with the superintendents and the RESA directors. We've been having normal communication with our school nutrition directors, and I see several of you were able to extend the invitation. So I know the majority of this information won't be new to them because they've been hearing it from us throughout the pandemic. We've made a commitment early on when things started to give directors briefings, in some cases within 24 hours of USDA guidance coming out. So we just continue that practice coming out of COVID, hopefully. I do have two members of my team with me today. One is Paige Holland Nordstrom, and she's the assistant director, and then also Trey Cowan, who's one of our area consultants. So we have a model where the area consultants really provide that direct support to our districts. So he's, I know, worked with several districts that have had some of the distribution errors or issues. So I had asked him if he would help be present as well. So thank you for that. Just so you know, to kind of give, I guess, a little bit of background about the role of Georgia Department of Education School Nutrition, we really are tasked by USDA with the oversight of the program. So the program is almost $1 billion worth of funding that flows to the local school districts to provide quality school meals to the children in Georgia. And so we are required to monitor that. That is just part of the requirement, that the more fun part of our job is really providing the support and helping local districts be successful. And we're excited. We have a very highly qualified team that is committed to that, and have been doing it for a long time, honestly. I think the pandemic's created some unique circumstances, and it allowed us to pivot and think of even more creative ways to provide that support. And collaboration within education, I think, is one of the key positive outcomes that's come from the dynamic of COVID with us. I've spoken to a lot of new superintendents, even through the crisis and start of the pandemic. So it's nice to get to see you in a little bit calmer setting. I know we've got some serious issues that are happening. We are going back to what we call benefit issuance, which is the model of free and reduced applications. And like I said, we're tasked with USDA for the oversight, but I think it's important to know that a lot of the decisions around our program tied to that funding are determined by Congress. And so a lot of times that is something that I think gets overlooked. Congress allocates the money that actually supports school nutrition programs across the nation. So when former Secretary Sonny Perdue made the statement that we were going to serve meals at no cost, he put a caveat in there and said, as long as the funding lasts, because he knew he was not authorized to spend more than what Congress had allocated. So that's kind of the challenge of where we've been. And I think, to be honest, some of the advocacy groups have been really trying to stress the messaging around continuing school meals at no cost, which would be amazing, but just to be clear, like, the Department of Education's role is not advocacy in the sense of advocating with Congress about that. Now, we do serve as content experts. So we share like what's happening in your local systems. We share the challenges, but just like Gail and the Superintendent's Association exists, there's associations that exist for that advocacy purpose. So the Georgia School Nutrition Association, the School Nutrition Association, which is the national organization, as well as Georgia Academy of Nutrition, and then just the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Both have been very active, along with No Kid Hungry and several other organizations, trying to get the message back to see if potentially there would be support with that federal funding to continue the dynamic that we've been in. But with all of that said, I think, again, we have a unique opportunity in Georgia, as represented by a lot of the leadership that's on this call that are school nutrition directors, both within the DOE and the local leadership. We've managed a lot of unique challenges in the last couple of years, historically even. So, we're committed as a DOE to support our local programs and have been doing that to make sure that they can be successful. Related to the food distribution issues, we have 2 procurement specialists that have been working with many of the local districts here, as well as our area consultants, to try to navigate this unique situation. The biggest challenge that's related to that distribution issue really is twofold. And some of this relates maybe even to things you're seeing in your district. One being labor shortages. I know we all have seen that. You see the help wanted signs. That is not unique to fast food or even some of the school nutrition programs, teacher shortages, and so forth. It's also happening in the distribution area. They don't have enough staff to literally pick the product and load trucks. And then second to that, there's a truck shortage, just like there's a car shortage because of the chip issue and some of these parts. Some of these companies, they're not even able to expand their business. They don't have the labor and they don't have the trucks to do that. We have had conversations. I actually had a meeting with U.S. Foods Government Affairs team 3 weeks ago, just to basically see, because again, I can't tell them they have to service our schools. That's not my role. But I did want to find out what we could do to be better business partners, supporting their business, because obviously they're in it as a business. And I did want to ask really the one important question, are they looking to get out of school business? And they stressed, emphatically that was not the case, but that they did have to make some business decisions to make sure they could still give good customer service in the majority of their school districts. So we did see some districts that lost that as one of their bidding companies. But I know I've been so impressed by, especially one group, I think it was a Pioneer RESA group, that really, they communicated with us regularly, worked with our procurement team to understand, like, within the USDA parameters, what was feasible. And they've secured a contract with another company that ironically has done a lot of school business, but just not in Georgia. So I'm really hopeful that that will continue to foster more opportunities in the future. It may not happen right now, but hopefully next year we'll see more opportunity for that company to be competitive and give opportunities to our local districts. We also have a USDA foods warehouse contract. And so we have groups that are part of a contract there that store USDA foods for the local school systems. And we've had conversations with them. One of them has not been in the mainline distribution arena. And so they're very interested in that. So there again is another potential partner for the future. So again, maybe not filling a gap at the present moment, but I think it gives us hope that there is a potentially expanding market there. I know we have milk and dairy issues, mostly around milk distribution. We had a plant closure. So we've been working and meeting regularly with the Dairy Alliance to talk through solutions. We've also met with a company out of Florida that is very much interested in bringing milk to Georgia. They just need distribution. They've got the capabilities to package. They just don't have the distribution channels, but they're communicating to some of the distributors in South Georgia to see what potential might come there. We've also communicated options for shelf-stable milk. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because, I think we're all used to, when I was in school, refrigerated milk coming, but shelf-stable milk has been around for decades in other countries, used real successfully. So we have made some of those connections for districts in the short term until they figure out how to fill the gap that's happened from this plant closure. And one of the things we've really just encouraged our districts to think about is what resources are available and how to problem solve with what they've got. Some of it may be thinking about our business model a little differently. And as Mr. Costley shared, I was a local director, so we were used to daily milk deliveries. But really and truly, if they don't have the capacity to deliver to us daily, what are the opportunities to expand our storage so that maybe we could take less frequent deliveries and still have service from those companies? So I think, some of it is us thinking through, the dynamics of that. I know districts that have also been creative with their mainline distributors and given after hours access security-wise and set up parameters to make sure things were secure in those schools. Again, those were things 20 years ago, none of us really thought we should even consider. But again, now this is a unique time. And so how do we kind of meet some of these folks to help make it a feasible opportunity for them to service our schools? And we've also been talking about looking for ways to expand storage. I do think that's really important. The supply chain issues aren't going away anytime soon, from my understanding. So the best thing we can do, again, is manage the resources we've got. So I spoke to a director in North Georgia that had a school that was being used just for Head Start, but it had been an old school, so it had good storage capabilities. They were able to buy a compressor and activate that freezer and use it for overflow storage to support the district. And so it allowed them to purchase ahead several weeks worth of food as it became available, so they didn't have that challenge. I heard of a district that also actually is paying like a monthly fee to keep a frozen truck on site that can, again, maintain product so that they have it accessible to their students. It's impressive, quite frankly, how our local school nutrition directors have thought through solutions for some of that. And I certainly appreciate the challenges and all that they've been facing. We've been truly strategizing, communicating. They've done an excellent job of keeping us in the loop. We also communicate that to USDA. So just yesterday, I was on a listening call with other state agencies and the School Nutrition Association and No Kid Hungry, who are those advocacy groups. And they're going back to USDA to share the real life things that we were sharing with them as state directors. I'm going to stop talking for a minute and see. I don't know if there's questions. I don't know how.
Dr. Dawson, let's do that. That's great. So we got kind of like I see a two-pronged discussion here. We can kind of get to maybe go back to the Congress thing in a second and the no-cost programs that we have. So there are several systems here, and so what I'm hearing you say is some of them are collaborating, trying to approach people on new contracts, and then focus on storage. So, guys, I want to encourage you in the call. I'll kick it off, but for those of you who have been successful now, what has been successful for you? I know we've got some cafeteria managers here that are working with our school nutrition directors that are working with our superintendents. What strategies are you working with? And then Lynette, you might with your staff is like, if they're sitting there and they're still not quite sure how they're going to get milk or food, what would be the like 2 or 3 steps that they could take who should they call? What conversations should they have? Because some of them are saying, what do I do if I can't get milk? So maybe I'll just open it up to the floor is maybe best practices or even some potholes you stepped in so that Lynette is aware of kind of what you're dealing with, what your success stories are, and what your puzzles still are. I'll open up the floor if you can just kind of, everybody stay muted, but we'll try to keep it as orderly as possible. Would anybody like to share? Does anybody on this call say, I don't know what I'm going to do? And it could be that 3 other people are thinking the same thing, and maybe we can start the discussion that way. Anybody want to start? Scott Richardson, I see your hand raised.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to Dr. Dodson for being on the call with us. Actually, we are one of the mountain groups up here in North Georgia in Dawson County. We just did receive a bid today, a sole bid for our grocery. The problem is that the trouble we're facing is that in the bid, and I have already sent the bid letter out to the procurement specialist at GaDOE to take a look at. But now what's happening is they're treating us pretty much the same as they're treating street business. They're issuing $4.50 per case surcharge on top of the cost. And then on top of that, they're wanting to move every 20 days with a new price increase. So it's not really a bid anymore. Now it's becoming more of a business agreement. So that's going to be very difficult. When I did the numbers just on that bid alone, if we were to take that, and it's with myself and with Lumpkin County, we're looking at the district having a cost of in excess of about $100,000 more in our food costs just to take in that extra $4.50 per carton unit. So it's real difficult. And of course, when you talk about infrastructure and trying to get building coolers or building a freezer or even getting something up and running in Dawson County, we do not have that infrastructure at this point in time. So, and have to build that capital is going to take quite a bit. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place situation right now. Thank you.
Anybody else want to add to that or kind of stay in the same category? Or any of you consolidating facilities or any of you, the recess, like sharing facilities to possibly stores, that idea come up, or the delivery truck issue? Is there any potential sharing or collaboration of maybe trying to meet people halfway? I may be stepping in potholes here, but they're just trying to make sure everything's on the table. Any cooperatives working together on that? I know, I guess, is the cooperative in Pioneer part of this conversation? Scott?
So we can, through direct ship, try to negotiate with Pioneer through the cooperative there to be able to bring some of our goods in. That's what both Lumpkin County and Dawson County are looking to do. The problem is that, co-op can't take in everything that we bring in on skids or pallets. So that's, again, it becomes a spacing issue and a logistics issue on how to actually store bulk items or excess items. I'm looking at if we have to go once the state takes a look at the contract that I just received in, if that's what we have to do, I'm looking at trying to talk with my management team over here and reduce the amount of trucks that we get in so we can try and reduce some of that cost. So it's just, you got to think outside the box with this one. It's still costing the districts a whole lot more money when you think about the fact that reimbursement rates, they won't change. In fact, they're going to go down a little bit from SSO to National School Lunch. So, reimbursement rates, we're not a restaurant. Our profitability is based on whatever that reimbursement rate is with our free reduced lunch and participation. So it's going to be a struggle. The struggle is definitely real.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody else want to weigh in on victories or challenges regarding bids or supply?
Dr. Dodson, I would, on behalf of GSSA, again, thank you for participating today and working with this group. I know as we've talked with superintendents around the state, the issue really has been pretty widespread. Some are having real problems. Some are able to get what they need, but they're incurring higher costs. And some of this is, I guess, caused by the inflation. But what I'm hearing, at least out in the field, we're probably having more rural systems that are struggling here because, number one, the distance that the food companies have to travel, and maybe because of the lack of storage space, indoor freezer space. So I guess my question would be, I know you said that the DOE is not an advocacy agent per se, but are you getting any kind of feedback from the feds about, do they see this being a long-term issue for states and or local districts, or do they think that this is maybe just a blip in the radar and that we do see the light at the end of the tunnel? Do you have any sense of that, Lynette?
Well, that's a great question. So I did fail to mention I'm actually on a task force with SNA around the supply chain issues. So we have routine meetings, and that's a national meeting, like you mentioned. We're not necessarily anticipating a quick fix to this. I think everything in the market is indicating that we've got some challenges. Now, I will say this. We're not seeing as much of the shortage with raw products as we are with the specialty items. So I think that is something that is important to kind of be aware of. And again, we know that, in Georgia, we've been fairly lucky. A lot of our kitchens do have equipment that, they're fairly well staffed, set up to where they have equipment to help with a lot of the quantity preparation. So we do have 2 culinary specialists that we've hired in the last 2 years and really focused on teaching our folks how to manage production effectively and thinking about utilizing some of that equipment so that instead of getting in stuff already, in essence, ready to serve, that a minimum at least of speed scratch cooking could happen to help facilitate some of these shortages. And we're seeing some districts do that in some really innovative ways. I actually attended a conference in March, and one of the things that they talked about, historically, our laborers only worked 6 hours a day. That's just kind of standard. School nutrition, they worked about 30 hours a week. And this particular assistant director, it was in a large district in Kentucky, was sharing that they really had adjusted their model to where they did their service, and then in the afternoon they spent 2 hours of doing prep for the next day. So again, getting the raw product that's more available and working with it and preparing it for the next day. And I actually spoke with the director in North Georgia that actually shared that they were doing that model. And so two things that were happening, she wasn't having as much of an issue, and this was a small rural district. She wasn't having as much problem getting some of those raw products, and they were spending that time to prep for the next day. So now all of her staff were 8-hour employees, which even as a local director, a lot of my staff worked a second job because 6 hours just wasn't enough for them. So it kind of maximizes that labor, and you're already paying benefits on that staff. But what she said it also did is when they incurred shortages with staff the next day, they were already prepared and set up to serve kids. So I think some of those things are solutions we keep recommending to our local districts to consider. Again, you know, we can't control what we don't have, but we can control what we've got. And so I think it's a really important time for us, just like all of you have done in education, to kind of think about what we can do to manage that. And Scott's not wrong. We are going to go back to those rates. You also have the opportunity, obviously, to charge, again, for the paid meals, to sell a la carte items, those sorts of things. So we know that's going to be a shift. And we know with even free and reduced applications, families being out of the habit of taking that, I think it's going to take all of us communicating with families about the importance of filling out that paperwork, whether it's online or an actual application. But certainly you all being supportive of the school nutrition program and encouraging students to continue to participate will be really critical with all of this moving ahead, because we need participation. As a lot of you found out during COVID, the funding is tied to the meal service. So without meal service, there's no funding really to support the program. It's a little different than some of the other programs in education where it's an allotment based. We don't have that dynamic, but that's actually, I think, a good thing, because we can control our destiny by encouraging participation. So
I'm going to follow up with another question if I can. I know one of the things that I heard from one school nutrition director was, you know, of course, everybody, your folks are hard workers and they want to play by the rules and do what they need to do to be in compliance. I know there are nutrition guidelines and standards that they have to meet. Has anybody mentioned maybe some flexibility with those nutrition standards that might help in some of the food prep and or how they acquire some of their product? Is that been discussed anywhere?
Oh, yes, sir, definitely. So there was actually an opportunity, and we really encouraged our local directors and people in the state to respond. USDA had an opportunity to comment on this transitional meal pattern. And so we really encouraged everybody to go ahead and make those comments with USDA to let them know that is the voice that then, you know, determines a lot of the regulation and is shared again with Congress. Again, so this is, and it's very complicated, but we're really not having as much of a change this next year other than with an 80% whole grain requirement where we've been at 50%. Otherwise, really everything else is kind of rocking on as it's been. So the nutritional standards just really increased in that whole grain requirement. And we have communicated to USDA that we're a little concerned about some specialty items that would be available, particularly around breakfast and how that would look. We're planning, we have a preview summer training series for June. Again, really trying to think through solutions and how this could be managed. We've got some menu pattern stuff that we're going to be sharing around how different things could be served and what that would look like. So we're going to be starting that actually next week and walking through that with our districts. But we have definitely communicated that. The challenge again comes back to the structure of our program is tied to the federal requirements that are related to the health of our nation and the Institute of Medicine. And so those parameters get set really by Congress in the requirements of our program. So USDA only has so much flexibility in all actuality. And we even asked for waiver flexibility in March when we were in Washington. So our local directors were there, a lot from Georgia were there. We talked about the ability to have waiver extension. Unfortunately, Congress has not given USDA that flexibility. And so we've got some flexibility for this summer that we've already shared out with the districts, and those districts are already communicating to us. So we know we can get through the next couple of months. And then again, we're just trying to navigate, keep communicating with the challenges that y'all are facing. And we appreciate you letting us know that, because those are real things that we can share back with them. And as you know, Dr. Cindy Long, who's the head of the Food Nutrition Services, she was here. And actually Superintendent Woods also accompanied us on that meeting. We were in Fayette County, and Coquita Wilder did an excellent job of communicating the challenges as we're talking about today from a local perspective. So they're hearing it, I mean, certainly from all different avenues, including, of course, Georgia DOE. The challenges still exist, though, as it relates to a lot of those legislative decisions.
Before Shelley Daniels has been so patient with her hand raised, I want to get to her and say, but I do have a follow-up on the, you mentioned the comment period. Is that something that is still open and that stakeholders could contribute to? No? It
ended, I'm sorry. It was open for 60 days. We shared it out to the districts, and so did GSNA. But unfortunately, that period has closed. But that doesn't mean that it's not important to stay aware of legislation that's happening. There's still discussions going on from those organizations about continued flexibility and what the future looks like. And you have the opportunity to send letters to Georgia senators, especially, and House members at the national level to communicate with them about what y'all are seeing. I would encourage that, to be honest. If there's concerns you have, those really are the groups that are the true decision makers in this.
That as well. And guys, I'm taking notes on this as well. So I will research ways that perhaps if those who are interested, or some of your colleagues, as you report this call to others later, if you were interested in contacting Georgia delegation to Congress, we'll kind of come up with a method for that for you. Shelley, you've been so patient waiting. Did you have a comment you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add, when we were talking about bids, I'm the school nutrition director in Glenn County, and our bid opening was today at 12 o'clock. And for the food bid, this was our second milk bid putting out. So milk has been the challenge, but we did get a milk vendor to reply out of Jacksonville, Florida. So we are on the coast and we're south. So we did get a milk vendor on that, but we did have to release a lot of the specs that we would normally have as kind of coming more often, kind of like Dr. Dotson was mentioning. We said, come once a week, come at all, and so we had one vendor on that, one food vendor respond. But what's unique is a letter came with that bid stating that we will see market noted on a lot of those things, on a lot of the prices. We will see things that say price later or simply later. So we put specific specs on different food items that we want to put on our menu. And although they're responding with a sub, they're not responding with the quality items that we would like to see responded to on our bid. And then one paper vendor. So paper was a huge challenge for us this year. And we have one food vendor, one paper vendor, and one milk vendor at this point. And one of the things that we're seeing with summer lunch program, we used to see subs where if we asked for a certain item and they would say, we don't have that item, but we'll sub this item. We're getting simply outs. So which means we don't have a sub for those items as well. So we received four type pages of outs for our June summer lunch program. So I just kind of wanted to add to those challenges that we're seeing and kind of unique things that we're doing. So the milk bid did come back once we said we would, if you could deliver just once a week. So just wanted to elaborate being that we just opened our bids and what we're seeing in that.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel. I appreciate it. And I see Dr. Ridley from Gilmer has been listening. You want to add to that?
Well, I'd like to circle back to Dr. Barrow's question. We're aware of the changes but the 50 to 80% grain, that is our concern. And I want to make sure that I understood Dr. Dodson's response. Basically, we're being told to reply to a comment period that ended before we had this information and write letters to Congress. To me, that doesn't sound like anything more than good luck with that. I mean, I'm a little concerned about that.
No, sir, I'm sorry if that was what I was sharing was that there was an opportunity to provide comments on the rule. And yes, that period ended, but of course, being proactive and continuing to communicate is certainly part of that. But to your point, we are prepared to support your local director. If they will reach out to us, we'll look at menu options and how we can help them plan for that. So we're definitely not saying good luck. That's why we have these summer training sessions planned. Our area consultants are communicating. We've had directors briefings. We've pretty much walked hand in hand, even with districts that are faced with challenges. Just a reminder, this grain requirement used to be 100% 2 years ago. So during COVID, former Secretary Perdue reduced it to 50% because he knew about the challenges. So they met us in the middle by giving us 80%. Again, we've spoken to a lot of directors that feel really comfortable about the requirement at lunch. The concern that we keep hearing is about breakfast. And again, that's where we've been really looking at the meal pattern to see what options exist. So I just encourage your local director to reach out to us, sir, and we'll be happy to support and walk through that with them.
Thank you, guys. And probably, I think it goes for all. We're all caught in the middle of an unprecedented set of situations. I think I was a superintendent for 11 years, and I don't recall. I had many conversations with my school nutrition director, but never that we couldn't get milk or that we couldn't get people to bid. It was more which bid do we take? And so, I mean, we're all going to have to work together on that. And what we're learning too is we are all in the middle of a bureaucracy. That's what this is. We've got some people above our heads that have to make some decisions, and perhaps that's one of the things so that we create our own look. And but what I'm hearing from Dr. Ridley is that there doesn't appear to be some easy answers. So perhaps we'll just kind of keep this communication, this dialogue open with you guys, Dr. Dodson and the DOE. I mean, one thing is the superintendents, we're kind of catching up based on what our cafeteria folks and school nutrition folks are telling us. Our school nutrition directors have probably, they've been working on this on our behalf probably for quite some time. And I think what we're hearing is it's now bubbled to the point that it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? And so let's don't hide from that. Is there anybody, is there anything else because it is frustrating because we're not going to leave this call today with a definitive answer that's going to solve our problem, but we can start that issue. I did see, okay, Scott, you've got your hand up again.
Yes, thank you. I just want to ask Dr. Dodson, I know that you've told us as directors, but I guess for the benefit of everyone here, we know that obviously there are issues with grain. We see that in the news every day. If in looking at the situation that both Lumpkin County and Dawson County are in now with the company that's bidding on us, possibly not being able to carry some of those items. So if a system or if a school was unable to provide that 80%, especially at the breakfast time, and with documentation, can we be allowed to deviate from that meal pattern?
So, and we have waivers in place right now. I think, again, in the fall, we're going to have to probably reevaluate what flexibilities they give us. But I do know we're going to work with you. So I just would encourage you, like I mentioned to Dr. Ridley, reach out to us, Scott. You do on a routine basis. Let's talk through the situation. Let's talk through the documentation so that, and here's the reality, we'll be evaluated based on us evaluating you. So documentation of the situation is critical moving ahead. Communication with us is also critical. So just keep your area consultant in the loop. That's why I had Mr. Cowan on the call today. He's one of our 14 area consultants. They are there to have these boots on the ground conversation and offer solutions. So as we've been out monitoring, we have not issued any kind of penal repercussions financially based on that. The districts had great communication with us. We were very well aware of any challenges that they had related to supply chain, and we were able to put the documentation in point in case USDA wanted to come back and look at that. So again, just communicate with us, and I appreciate what you said to Mr. Crossley, like moving ahead. I'm happy to do this. We're having routine meetings with our directors, providing directors briefings. And if that helps facilitate some of that with the superintendents, we are more than happy to do that. We really do care. We've spent a lot of time. Our team has spent a lot of time on the phone, both in all areas, not only with local districts, but also with other people's, to really help support you guys navigating these unusual times. We're going to get through this. I feel very certain about that. We've got a lot of smart directors that are on this call, others that aren't here. Of course, y'all are supportive of our program, so we can come up with solutions to navigate this next period of time. And I feel confident that we're going to come out successfully for the children of Georgia. I really do. We've done that throughout the last 2 years. I mean, start of the pandemic, I think, demonstrated that. Our district started feeding children in a couple days when people were scared to even go outside. So we were right there shoulder to shoulder with them. Ms. Nordstrom and I spent that whole weekend actually approving waivers because we never dreamed that USDA would be delivering over 100 waivers, giving flexibility over the past 2 years. We don't really know what the next year is going to look like, but again, communication, resource evaluation, just trying to figure out how can we make this work for the children of Georgia, I think is where my team's commitment is. So just communicate with us, Scott, and we'll walk through that together.
But if I can, Dr. Dodson, there are national organizations that we have good connections with as well. Would you be comfortable in sharing with Buddy and myself, any specific major concerns that you have from your perspective and or suggestions in how these issues could be addressed? And the reason why I ask for that, if we can get it, somewhat in a bulleted form, succinct, brief, we can reach out to our national affiliates and maybe they can knock on a few doors for us as well, just so that they're, a lot of times, and I'm not defending anything that happens in Washington, but a lot of times people say, well, we didn't know, and I know we say, well, we had a comment period, but maybe folks didn't know that they could or should have been responding to the issue. So I think, I know we all appreciated USDA's under the guidance of the past Secretary of Purdue to have some flexibility, and that really helped us get through the hump. I think now that we have the perception that, the COVID is past and we're moving on, everybody's wanting to go back to where we were before it started. And there's a lot of issues like supply chain, like the war in Ukraine, just a number of other issues that have negatively impacted, particularly school nutrition program. And we need to come back and maybe reset that based on the concerns that folks have. So if you don't mind, if you feel comfortable, send it to Buddy or send it to me, send it to both of us, and we can reach out to our national affiliates and see if we can't knock on some doors that way too.
You're muted, Dr. Dodson.
Right. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Barrow. I think the really important part of this that I think gives me the most hope is that we are having a conversation with superintendents and school nutrition directors about the true challenges. So it's not just a school nutrition issue, it's a Georgia education issue. And I think that is a great outcome from COVID, because I think, you know, in the past, to your point, like even just the awareness of the comment period, that was probably isolated to school nutrition, you know, and so we didn't do a good job of probably getting that out to y'all. And I keep encouraging our local directors to please communicate, you know, with their superintendents, chief operating officers, whoever it is, to keep y'all in the loop, because this is an ever-changing dynamic. And so the challenges we face today may be different than the challenges we face in 2 months. But our commitment as y'all's, you know, to the students is there. So I think us making those connections, and I'm very happy to share opportunities. We've said all along, the superintendents have so much ability to advocate on behalf of the, you know, your local situation in your school. And so that would go a tremendous way, truly. So that would be awesome.
But I'll add to that, because like, you know, like I kind of, you know, when Brian from Gilmer brought up, you know, it's like, you know, the superintendents, I mean, they've got so many issues flying around. There's no way that they're going to know about a comment period. Sometimes they won't know that there's an issue until, you know, because obviously the chain of commands is going, the cafeteria managers and the school nutrition directors are going to know first, and then they've got to communicate with the SUPs. But the SUP, to your point, the SUPs can do some of the legwork in trying to advocate for you guys, because you're trying to get us the resources that we need, and sometimes we in the affiliate organizations can knock on the doors. So I mean, I don't even know what to recommend, but you know, I bet you that out of the 182 superintendents in the state, most of them are probably couldn't quote you the whole grain requirements. But I will tell you, Dr. Barrow said, is I'd probably the number, if I get a phone call or a Zoom call about this, the nutrition requirements come up probably number one. There's a perception, and maybe true or half true, that because, you know, and of course we all know the nutritional guidelines have been a political issue as well. I mean, for just being honest, over the last 12 years, you know, if there's some information that perhaps could get to the school nutrition directors, that you haven't already done it, but something, hey, share this with your superintendents, brief them on, hey, because I don't know that I knew there was 100% whole grain 2 years ago, and it went to 50 and then it went to 80, which might provide some context with little things like that. And then we can help, you know, maybe amplify the voice in the right corners that perhaps you can't because of your role, if that makes sense. So if there's anything that we can do, GSSA and Gale, if you have information that might help those SUPs and help those principals, because the principals are getting it all the time. They're getting this feedback all the time from their managers. We'll be glad to help share and be a bridge between that communication so that everybody's on the same page.
Yes, and we're going to continue to encourage our directors to share it up to y'all too, because we certainly understand how busy and how many critical issues you guys are dealing with. And just know that myself and my team, you know, we're also available. So many of you have emailed me. Please continue to do that. If you have specific questions about things, if I can't answer it, I've got an incredible team that is happy to share those responses. But I think, again, that communication moving ahead is just really critical to this. So I'm really excited that, honestly, we had this conversation today.
Well, this prong two, I think we've kind of alluded to it, and it could be just more of an awareness thing. One of, I think, Jody and our goal, GSSA and Gale's goal is we try to make sure that our superintendents and thus our principals are not taken by surprise, because, you know, they're going to try to get a little time off in the summer and then come back and start school. And there may be some people in the state that are not quite aware. I know the school nutrition directors are quite aware, but it's going to get to the superintendent's desk and perhaps the board members' desks when parents find out, you know, they haven't had to pay for lunch or breakfast, and now they are. And so maybe some marketing, some PR campaigns, and some common communication that we could amplify over the next 2 months so that there are no surprises. We don't want our parents to be surprised, don't want our boards to be surprised. So what would you say about, could you give us just a quick rundown, what's coming, what the timelines are on the programs?
Sure. So doing what's called benefit issuance, or as y'all know it probably more commonly is the free and reduced applications, that is required for next school year, but those cannot be taken until July 1 because that is technically the start of the new school year calendar. So with that, though, we shared with the local directors. So if you haven't seen it, ask them. We shared 2 really important graphics with them that you could use. They're turnkey. You could put them out on your social media. You could share them with parents. The 5 reasons to complete a free and reduced application. There's also a resource around why it's important to eat school meals. And then we also shared an email template that could be used again, however you disseminate communications to your parents about the fact that applications were going to be needed again. We also did a Fed Talks with Title I. So the family engagement coordinators have been on calls, and there will be another webinar in like 2 weeks with Title I about supporting this initiative. So Dr. Banter has shared, that they would be willing to help facilitate, collecting free and reduced applications. So if you haven't heard that, think about people within the district that might be outside of school nutrition that could help support some of that. June 14th is the webinar on Title I, by the way. Also, we're going to be doing a podcast. So you probably don't know this, but in the school nutrition world, there is it's called Fuelcast, and it's really kind of meant to be not so much a regulatory thing as an informational thing around school meals. And we're going to do a special edition of that. Dr. Banter and I are the end of June, and we're going to make that available to all of you. And you can take that and share that out to families, push that out however you can. Again, because I think it's going to take a lot of different ways to communicate to your local families the value of completing that meal application. So the more ways that you can make it available and encourage them and follow up. Again, principals have so much ability to encourage that at the local school level. So that partnership with those local cafeteria managers and the school nutrition director is really critical. That helps facilitate getting those out to families, make it part of open house, and some of those opportunities where families are coming in for engagement as school starts.
Any questions that the resources that Dr. Dawson is referring to? I sent to all RESA directors and some of the SUPs that are on our base Friday group. But if you did not get those materials, let us know. Or if you don't get them in the next one, it included a sample letter to send to parents, 2 graphics, and I will put my email address in the chat box. Let me see if I can chew gum and talk at the same time. And of course, and basically, I will make sure that relevant questions are forwarded to GSSA as well. I just want you to know, guys, you guys are doing great work. We've got great partners. I want to say thank you to the Department of Education, but you've got the Gale Association and all of our affiliates, which includes GSSA. Between these 2 organizations, we will do everything we can to be a bridge for you for communication, try to hunt out the resources that you don't have time to find, and we'll try to help you get those. And I encourage each of you and your partners in your regions in the RESAs to email us, contact us, let us know, what you're hearing, because what we can do is we can package that and make sure that, Lynette and her staff know what you're worried about. If they know what you're worried about, we can all advocate in the same line together. We're all on the same team. We'll see what we can get across. And any last minute comments from anybody in the group or any last minute questions while we have the luxury of Dr. Dodson and her staff's time? All right, well, you guys, you've been very busy. I appreciate you taking time out for this call, and that's what we're here for. We can do any call you want. We can have communications anytime you need. Just let us know what you need. We'll try to get it for you. And Dr. Dodson, you took time out of your schedule to meet with us today, and that is noticed and appreciated.
Well, I'm honored to do it, honestly. And please just communicate with us if there's a gap somewhere or a concern. Like Mr. Costley said, we are here to support you and your local programs. So I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and look forward to future conversations, honestly.
And I want to take the license to say hello to my former colleague, Paige Holland. Hey, Paige. All right. Well, for those of you I know, it's good to see you again. For those of you I don't know, it's great to meet you today. And we'll get back after it. We'll let you know if we hear an update, okay? Have a great week and happy graduation week.